Most of you have probably heard of the Nuzlocke challenge. The challenge originated in the Pokemon series, where it had the following two main rules. 1. You may only catch the first Pokemon you see in each route, and 2. If a Pokemon faints, you must release it. Other versions of the Nuzlocke challenge have arisen over the years, which include other rules to make the run either more difficult or more enjoyable. Some such rules include, if you white out, the run is over. You may not overlevel your Pokemon past the max level of the next gym leader. You may not use healing items. And my personal favorite, if you ever encounter a shiny, regardless of where and when you encounter it, you may catch and use it. Personally, I've only ever completed one Nuzlocke, and it was on the first Pokemon game I ever played, Pokemon Pearl. This is my favorite Pokemon game, so it felt fitting to do the challenge where I was most comfortable already. But what if I took the Nuzlocke challenge into other games? Now, there are very few games which fit the exact mold of catching Pokemon and fainting in battle, but I attempted to draw this exact parallel into my favorite non-Pokemon game, Minecraft. The one rule of my Minecraft Nuzlocke challenge is as follows. You may only pick up one of each item. Now at first glance, that seems definitively impossible. How could you possibly gather the required 12 Ender Eyes needed to enter the end, let alone do anything else in the run? Well, in the original Nuzlocke, players are free to use Pokemon that they receive through NPCs, whether through eggs, trades, or otherwise. In my version, I took this to mean that I can use any item that I loot from a container, as the one rule only states pick up, not hold. This is a crucial part of the Minecraft Nuzlocke run, as nearly everything apart from the few starter tools will be obtained through looting. At first, I started brainstorming. Because I would be playing on a random seed, I would have to collect Ender Pearls and Blaze Rods, and in fact, more than a normal run, since every Ender Eye would be gone after using it. Hypothetically, a player could get Ender Pearls without them having to be dropped on the floor by trading with a Cleric Villager. Unfortunately, in the 1.16.1 version of Minecraft, there's absolutely no way of obtaining Eyes of Ender without first obtaining a Blaze Rod, which is only obtainable as a drop from blazes. So, now what? Well, fortunately, the devs answered my prayers with the most magical block in this run, the Hopper. The Hopper converts dropped items into container items, which can then be looted freely. Now I was faced with another dilemma. How am I going to get enough wood to make a hopper? I can only collect one log, right? Well, fortunately, that's not true in three big ways. First, each log type counts as its own item, so I could theoretically craft my chest with 4 oak planks and 4 birch planks. On top of that, if you use an axe on a log, you can turn it into a stripped log, an entirely new block to be picked up. This doubles the amount of wood we can get. Lastly, and most importantly, wood can actually be looted from chests in the overworld, both from pillager outposts and taiga villages. All of this is not to mention that I can just break a chest I find and pick up one of those. Once I had all the wood though, what was I going to do about the iron? I can't mine for it since I can only pick up 1 ore. I can't even kill the village's iron golem because I can only pick up 1 of what it drops. However, if I were to find an ocean, I could search for a shipwreck, which contains a chest full of iron, as well as a map to a buried treasure chest that contains even more. It was clear by now that I was going to be doing a lot of chest looting in this run, but I had a rough game plan of what I needed to do and went ahead and started running. The first few runs were a little rough. I was dying to things that you really shouldn't be dying to, simply because I didn't have the tools I usually would. No axe to kill a baby zombie, no doors to breathe underwater, and so on. The challenge was proving to require a more methodical approach different from the one that I was used to. Around my 3rd or 4th real attempt is when I got into the groove. Getting into the nether in 1 hour and 10 minutes is not usually something speedrunners are proud of, but it was the farthest I'd made it yet, and with all the materials I needed for greatness. While collecting up the iron I needed, I realized that different village types, while having different chest loot, also have differently colored beds, each of which counts as its own item. I could then loot 1 of each colored bed to have enough to defeat the Ender Dragon. White and yellow from the Plains Village, green lime and yours truly, cyan, from the Desert Village. Because this first run got to the nether without a taiga village, I didn't have the repository of wood I really wanted, so I had to stick with the 5 beds I had and hope it was enough. Unfortunately, this run would end prematurely within the first Bastion I encountered when I accidentally opened a chest in front of a piglin. A stupid mistake, but it was nothing that couldn't be done again. And so, I did just that. The next run made it to the Bastion with materials and more by the 52-minute mark. Not that I needed to be fast, but I was really feeling myself at this point. Not only that, but I'd stumbled upon probably the best Bastion I could have found. A Stables Bastion. Now, if you're familiar at all with Minecraft speedruns and Bastion types in general, this may be a surprise to hear, as the Stables Bastion, and particularly the one I found, is very difficult to find gold quickly. However, I was not going for quickly. What's unique about the Stables Bastion is its abundance of chests within the stable structure itself, which allowed me to run around and loot some gold to trade. I employed my hopper strategy with a few piglins in a hole, and it worked beautifully. There was a minor hiccup where a piglin threw pearls out of the hole, which I couldn't pick up, but I just blocked off the top and let him have at it. After all was said and done, I was leaving with only 11 pearls, not enough to make it to the stronghold. I had looted all I could at the current Bastion, but sometimes you just low roll, and so I went on searching. I was still in need of a fortress, but now I was also in need of another Bastion. Fortunately, I had just enough wood and iron to craft a third hopper for the second Bastion, so all was going somewhat according to plan. My fortress was largely uneventful. I blockaded the blaze spawner in such a way that I could hit them into a corner where the hopper was waiting for their drops. After I had collected 8 rods, I headed out to find another Bastion. The next Bastion was not so chock full of gold, but man, those piglins knew what I needed. I ended up with 11 pearls in 12 gold trades. Keep in mind the average is 6 pearls in 20 trades, or about 4 in my 12. The rest of the run was sure to be smooth sailing, said my unassuming mind at the time. I had enough Eyes of Ender to triangulate the position of the stronghold, and entered the end with 5 beds. On a normal day, this would be more than enough for me to defeat the Ender Dragon. In fact, I had a lot of practice using only 4 beds. On this day, however, I made an oopsie. The setup went off without a hitch, but I placed the second bed a bit too high, causing it to place on the block above where I was aiming at. Not only did this break the bed, but I missed the dragon cycle. And now I was down to 2 beds, which meant I was back to the drawing board. I couldn't kill myself because I wouldn't be able to pick up my items again, and I certainly couldn't 2-bed the dragon. So, I grabbed my trusty water bucket and got to climbing. I nailed one crystal after another until all but one was still standing, and as I made my way up to that last crystal, the dragon decided it would be a nice time to swoop in and send me flying. Usually, this exact situation is why I would have a water bucket on hand. But, ironically, the water was exactly what got me into this situation, and now I had nothing but a bucket to get me out of it. Needless to say, I plummeted to the ground and died, so close to victory. In a last-ditch effort, I tried to claw my way back to the end, itemless, to punch out the last crystal and punch out the dragon herself. But deep down, I knew that in the spirit of the Nuzlocke, I had whited out. And thus, even if I had done it, it would have been a hollow victory. So, I decided to come back the next day. And I came back even stronger. While other runs struggled to get enough wood and building blocks, this time, I spawned next to a taiga village, just what I needed. I looted a stack and 48 planks from the chests in the village, grabbed some iron armor off some armor stands, and even found a blacksmith, which gave me my iron pickaxe, my flint and steel, and even an iron axe through an emerald trade. While taiga villages don't typically have much food, leaving with only a handful of bread to my name, there just so happened to also be a rune portal, which gave me the gold boots I needed for the Bastion, and some golden carrots. At this point, I was on the hunt for another entrance. I hadn't had much luck searching underground, so I was really looking for a lava pool, or an ocean with a crack in the ground. 3 more villages, a stack of bread, and 2 more beds later, I finally found my ocean. I collected some more iron and gold in a nearby shipwreck, and headed down into the first crack I saw. Not the easiest crack to handle, but I found my nice lava pool, and headed into the nether sitting pretty. My first bastion turned out to be a treasure bastion. For normal speedrunners, this would have been a blessing, since there are many gold blocks hidden within the walls of the attached structure. However, for me, this was quite the opposite. Any gold in the walls was off limits, since I couldn't pick it up. I looted the few chests there were, and ended up at not even half a stack of gold. This was definitely nowhere close to the amount I needed. But before I headed out, I figured I'd loot the chests in the center of the treasure room. Nothing much there either, but I did wonder if there were some way for me to just dig into that juicy gold treasure. I continued on my journey in search of another better bastion, and ended up finding a stables. This stables bastion was a gold mine. I managed to loot 8 gold blocks from the chests in the stable structure. I dug out a hole, placed a hopper at the bottom, and lured some piglins in to start trading. I felt pretty comfortable with my stack in 42 gold, but I got a bit cocky. Tossing gold to the piglins wouldn't work because the gold would go into the hopper, and handing them the gold one by one was taking a bit of time, so I had the bright idea of tossing my stack of gold into the corner block so the piglins could grab it, but not the hopper. Unfortunately, that also meant that I could grab it. You can see where this is going. I was then left with only the 42 gold I hadn't thrown. I was a bit disappointed at this point, but the run was certainly not dead yet. I still had all that wood and iron from earlier to make more hoppers, so all I needed was another good bastion, and so I headed out hopeful. My next structure was the fortress, which in all honesty was a pretty boring event. I already had a foolproof plan to collect my rods, so I just kinda did it. Placed my hopper in the corner, and swung my diamond sword until I had 13 rods. A sizable amount, but given that I couldn't collect my eyes back, I wanted to be safe. I looked around a bit in the fortress to see if I could find any extra gold or diamonds, and actually left with a nice diamond pickaxe. After leaving, I was still on the hunt for my next bastion, which unfortunately was again a treasure bastion. This time the chests had no gold for me, but I was again enticed by the treasure room itself. This time, looking at the massive amount of iron and wood in my inventory, I came up with a plan. I built a tiny structure around the gold treasure and placed hoppers below the gold blocks. That way, when I mined them, I wouldn't pick them up, but they would go into the hoppers instead. This plan worked perfectly. Well, discounting the part where I almost burned myself to death. But besides that, I left with a solid 8 gold blocks as profit. This time, I handed the gold directly to the piglins, and it took a while. But I grabbed up all my ender pearls, a bunch of string to craft more than just 4 beds, built my portal right there, and jumped back into the overworld, ready to beat the ender dragon properly this time. Back up top, I was just about in the first ring of strongholds, so it couldn't be too far away. Still, I took the opportunity to sleep in a bed to pass the night to make my search easier. I was glad I had all that extra string. After triangulating the position of the stronghold entrance, I dug down and began my search. After a few minutes, I was in the portal room, ready for another shot at redemption. I ended up with 15 beds this time, and more wood and wool to craft even more. I was not going to resort to smashing those crystals this time. I set myself up for the nice run-in, and apart from the instant panic bed to prolong the dragon's descent, I executed a nice 5-bed kill to finish off the run with a 242.34. This run was quite a challenge, honestly, but it was definitely very fun and worth the second attempt at finishing for real. I'll leave a link to a download for this mod in the description if you want to try it out for yourself. It does require Minecraft Forge version 1.16.1, but otherwise has no dependencies and is a pretty easy download. If you enjoyed this journey, remember to subscribe for more content like this. Until next time, thanks for watching.